In this coronavirus, COVID-19 era, we still do recover. Hello, everybody. I'm Nate, and I'm an alcoholic and addict. Welcome to Life on Life Terms, Session 5. I want to start off going straight into it, man. The 12 steps. 12 steps were started by Alcoholics Anonymous and adopted in many groups to help with addiction on many things. I want to say that there was a point in time in this country where alcoholics and addicts had no hope. In 1813, there was a movement called the Temperance Movement. And I'm putting this out there because it's very important to understand the plight of the alcoholic and the addict. The Temperance Movement said that we keep temperate drinkers drinking moderately or temperate, prevent young drinkers from drinking or young people from drinking, and the alcoholics will soon die off. And that's crazy because that was the mentality that there was no hope for alcoholism. There was no hope for people addicted to stuff. It was that, they would just die off. And it's a powerful thing because the 12 steps help alleviate those afflicted with this disease. And it was started by an alcoholic and started a group called Alcoholics Anonymous, and it was named after the big book. And I'm not going to put too much of anything out there that even, got to do with, big bookology or anything like that. I'm going to give you my personal experience, with each step as it is written and each step I took to acquire this freedom from that addiction. So I just wanted to give you that brief history fact on that. But the first step is it says we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. And I want to tell you and be honest with you, it took a whole lot for me to admit my powerlessness. It took a whole lot for me to admit, that I couldn't do this. I couldn't overcome this by myself. Who wants to admit complete defeat? That's the question. But I came about this in a very weird way because I went through a whole lot of stuff. I went through a whole lot of stuff to get to that point where finally I surrendered on my ideas and the things that I wanted to do and my beliefs that I can overcome anything on my own. Very strong-minded individual, raised very strong family. I had a whole lot of great people in my life as far as my upbringing. I was not lacking anything emotionally or mentally or anything like that. Was educated pretty well. Even went to a private Catholic school for many years of my life. Was well off into the church. I had told in my story before that I had become an altar boy. So I had a whole lot of what you would say positive influences in my life. And nevertheless, I still became addicted to drugs and alcohol. So I wanna break down some stuff and I want to get really deep off into step one, because I always mention the 12 steps, and I always say I think everybody should do the 12 steps because really it's about removing the blocks from self that hold us back from basically being all we can be. That's a very blanket statement for the 12 steps, but it's very accurate because none of the 12 steps that I do is on anybody else. None of the 12 steps actually has anything to do with whether somebody else is recovering or doing the 12 steps. One step, only one step in the 12 steps has to do with me making amends to somebody. But the rest of the steps has to do with me living my life differently, having a new attitude, having a new outlook on life, and getting me out of the way. And what I mean by that is I block my blessings in a whole lot of situations. I've prevented myself from becoming all I can be because of my addictive mind. So I went through a whole lot as a kid. I'm a biracial man, and as a kid, I grew up, my mom being Italian, my dad being black. There was a lot of things. I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, so there was a lot of people calling names and stuff like that. Black folks would call me white boy. White people would call me nigga. And it was. Then one day I can remember we was standing in this little arcade we used to go to, and it actually wasn't even an arcade; it was a little store with some arcade games in it. And it was a TV up there, and the guy had a video on, and it was Prince, and Prince was playing, and one of my friends was like, "Yeah, man, he's mulatto," and I said, "What's mulatto?" And he said, "That's his mom white and his dad black." I said, "Oh man, I'm mulatto! Hell yeah, I'm the new mulatto." So excuse me, I was always trying to identify and find my way, and I always was self-seeking. I always was frightened. Um, in school, especially when I first got in school, I was a pretty timid kid. I wasn't outgoing or outspoken. I was nothing like I am now. I'll tell you that much. At the same time, I had become that in school. I had become the class clown because school was pretty boring to me. The criteria was easy. The homework was easy. I was excelling easily, and then I didn't want to look like a nerd. I wanted to be the jock. I wanted to be the sports guy. So I had a whole lot of different mixed up stuff going on, man. And these are things that was unmanageable for me growing up, and I didn't realize that till later on in my adult life. So going through, school, church, home being a wreck a whole lot of time. My dad was like a tornado in that motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? And alcohol, had really forged a wedge between my dad and his whole life. And I saw this. I saw this firsthand. And I always used to say I ain't never gonna drink or do drugs. And I turned out to be worse than him. But thank God for the 12 steps in recovery. But coming to realize there was things that I didn't have power over. There was a whole lot of things in my life, and I didn't want to admit that because I was real smart and a go getter. I was real, I would do whatever it took to compete and be the best I can be in whatever it was, basically. And then it got into my teen years. And as I got into my teen years, I got really curious about, why is my family so poor? And actually, now that I think about it, we wasn't really poor. We didn't have like money in excess, but we didn't starve. We didn't miss school. We had new clothes every year for school. I mean, we wasn't actually poor. And now to look at it from this angle, I could say, yeah, we was poor because, we didn't have half of the stuff I got now or anything like that. But the point is, we didn't really want for too much. And of course, all the kids want the newest toys and the latest this and that, and some stuff we did get, and some stuff we couldn't, but we wasn't exactly poor. So I can't tell you it was just a poor upbringing. My mentality wasn't poor. No, I was taught very well manners, taught English very well, taught math very well. Like I said, I went to a private Catholic school, so tuition was paid. You know, it wasn't like we was just homeless. We always had a place to stay. We always had meals. I always played sports, one sport or another, usually football or basketball. Excuse me, but I really growing up, like I said, getting into them streets, and the reason I got into them streets is because I saw that other kids that was in the same school I went to in high school, they was in the streets, and I would be walking past them to go to school or walking past them to go home, and I was real curious, man, and I could remember asking a buddy of mine. I said, "Hey, man, what y'all be doing on that corner, man? I see y'all early in the morning and late at night. I mean, in the evening." And he's like, "Oh man, I be getting this," and he pulled out a lot of money, and it was only like $200 or $300, but $200 or $300 then in the '80s, man, and you 14, 15, 16, that was a lot of money. Um, so I got real curious, and I went with this guy, man, and he started showing me, what they did up there, and the shooting dice gambling, the you name it, it was going on up there. Mainly the drugs was going up there, and in the '80s is when the crack era hit real hard for the little town, Youngstown, Ohio, where I'm from, and it took over, man, and like everybody was either doing it or selling it, and it was like it seemed to be the only way out of the ghetto that we lived in. So I took to it and got real good at selling and buying and flipping and all this stuff, and that's where my life kind of took me there. I stopped going to school. I wouldn't go a whole lot, so they would, I would be getting in trouble there, and it was just a lot there. I wasn't raised like that. I was raised to do what I was supposed to do, which was going to school and stuff like that. But I didn't. I started veering off track. I felt like I can at least help my family. I could be the sacrificial lamb, like the Jesus, got the Jesus complex and all that shit, and I could just sacrifice and help my family. And I, nothing could have told me, well, you doing something wrong to make some money. So you taking the wrong money, you trying to do something right with it. Nothing could have told me that wasn't right and that wasn't real at that time. So excuse me. But doing this, I start thinking that I had some power. I had a little crew of guys. I started thinking that I was a manager. Um, I also, in my teen years, worked a little different jobs and stuff like that. So I wasn't just strictly out there on the streets, but at one point I did get strictly out there on the streets. So I did have a lot of stuff going on, man. And growing up, like in the household, I would help my dad do stuff, remodel type stuff, paint type stuff. My granddad all the time, my mom's dad, he would always get me to do stuff. So I did learn a couple different trades, and at that time, if you had a trade or a skill, you was considered, a paid person, like So I was still developing my trade and skills and stuff like that, and so I thought. But when I got into them streets, man, I just looked past all of that, and I just said, you know what, I'm just go straight for this money right here, and got real addicted to hustling, got real addicted to getting money, got real addicted to managing other people, and so it took me a lot, man, to get to the surrender that step one in AA talks about. It took me a lot to admit my powerlessness. Um, and when I really got off into using drugs, it was like the drugs had just taken me over. and it's weird because it says in our in our big book, it says that we suffer from a spiritual malady. That's an illness. That's a sickness. That's like a malignant sickness. That's like something gonna kill you. We suffer from a spiritual malady, and once we overcome the spiritual malady, we straighten out mentally and physically. That's what it says. And that strictly means I thought I was schizophrenic when I was smoking crack. Especially when I first started. I hit that mug and I'm looking everywhere. I'm thinking fans about to come get me, people finna come do this and that, something finna happen, you know? And or get real sorry about stuff or be pitying everything or it was a lot. It was a whole lot. It was a whole lot when I was doing that, man. And I thought, it was a possibility that I might have been losing my mind. I thought it was a possibility that I might have been having a stroke. I mean, I couldn't function normally when I started getting high. And it if you look at a person that's getting high, and say a doctor would examine this person as just they just got a crackhead habit. They just want to smoke crack all day. For instance, me, like I was. It would be all kind of diseases, mental illnesses that the doctor would probably say they got. They got schizophrenia. They paranoid at everything. I mean, you name it, it's probably there. And we would actually portray these different defects, these different illnesses in our getting high. We trying to get high, we portraying this stuff. So I had to realize that I was not in control of shit. I had to realize that I did not have power. I had to realize that I could not manage my own life. This wasn't even about, I'm being a boss dude and all that. Yeah, of course, I went for the prestige. I wanted everybody to say Twink the shit. And that's my nickname, Twinkle. Or Twinkle, blah, blah, blah. And they did. And it boosted my ego. And so my ego was built off some false pride because they were saying I was the shit at selling dope. Come on, man. And to think that would last. And to think that, I would just continuously sell dope and be king of something someday and never get hemmed up or caught or none of that shit. And at the same time, I'm making enemies. I got the police as my enemies. I got the common person that's working. He don't like me. She don't like me. I got school principals couldn't stand me because I'll be banging my music and all that shit. And you walk by my car, it say, hey, get away from the vehicle. The alarm would just go the fuck off and don't even care. You ain't got to touch the car. I would be, I was on that prestige shit, man. And that says a whole lot because one of my addictions is that I am thing. I'm the man. I'm the blah, blah, blah. So one of my addictions is boosting my ego. And I couldn't even realize that. I didn't even realize that, Excuse me. So doing this first step, actually being honest with myself and accepting the first step into my life, basically realizing the first step. See, so by the time I got, through the penitentiary stuff and through the smoking and getting high stuff and chasing and, they call it chasing the dragon stuff and I mean, the women and the whatever was involved. By the time I got through all that and I realized I just couldn't handle this shit. It took a judge to send me to a program. Now, this program didn't even do the 12 steps. This program basically was a behavioral modification program. So I went through that. And I still had not surrendered, man. I smoked some bud in that program probably 3 weeks in. Um, Completed the program several months later, and went back and was teaching the people. The guys are still in there. Was staying there, and ended up leaving that program, and ended up saying, weed ain't never hurt me, and did nothing, and ended up smoking some bud, and wasn't even a good 2-3 months. I was all the way back on crack. Could not see the powerlessness that was on me when I put something in me. Could not see the unmanageability either, because I couldn't manage to just smoke one joint or drink one beer or smoke one hit of crack. I couldn't manage to ever do that, but I thought I could. So once I get done fooling myself, and this is important, once I get done fooling myself and I face reality is I have fucked up my whole life. That's reality. This ain't no such and such did it, the law did it, the police down the street did it. None of this shit got to do with what's really happening, because step one is a realization of the truth about yourself and your life. And when it says admit, that's honesty. Be honest. Twink, Nate, be honest. Did you fuck your life up? And when I had to look in that mirror in that painful day when I kept asking God to take this cup and please take these drugs away from me and do all this and that, when I had to look in that mirror and say, fuck you, Nate, man. And I'm talking about that was the last time I had to totally surrender, and I still surrender sometimes on an hourly basis, man, to things. But guess what? When I surrendered that time, it was complete and utter defeat. I had completely drove my life into the ground myself against all odds. How about that? When people say against all odds, he came up and became this and that. No, I was a person that was coming up. I was a person that had skills. I was a person that could get anywhere and do anything. And guess what? Against them odds, I completely went all the way down into the fucking ground. To me, that was my rock bottom, man. And when I looked at myself in the mirror and said, fuck you, Nate, that was a very, very pitiful day for me. And believe it or not, it was the beginning of the end of my bullshit. It was the beginning of the end of my bullshit. And it just took what it took. So I'm going to keep on giving this to you, because these steps, that I suggest, the principles are universal. And I always suggest, that people do the steps, man, to change your life. And our underlying theme of these sessions is change. And I always say that, but I never break the steps down for what they mean and what you got to do. And what it meant for me was step one. What it meant for me was I had to examine my life up to that point. This step one don't take somebody to convince me. Step one don't take, somebody got to designate I'm alcoholic or addict and say this and that. Step one simply means if I use drugs and fuck my whole life up every time I use drugs, there's something that I'm powerless over, which creates a whole lot of unmanageability in my life. That's what step one means. All I got to do is admit and accept that. And it takes a lot for people to admit and accept something, because it took a whole lot for me. I was literally 36 years old. That my last run ended, I was 36 years old. Okay? And that's old for some people, and that's younger for other people. And to me, I don't feel old, but I feel very, very experienced. I feel like I ran way longer than I should have. And I feel like I put a whole lot of bullshit out into the world that I shouldn't have. There were still moments, man, and I knew it was God sent moments because there's precious jewels in my life, my kids. And I'm glad to know that none of them are nowhere near as fucked up as I was when I was their age, going through the shit I went through. But when I had taken that approach, when I looked at it from another angle, excuse me, which meant when I looked at it from, damn, what have I done to myself? Instead of he did that or she did that or it ain't my fault or all I need is a break or all I need is a come up. I've had many breaks. I've had many come ups. I've had opportunities galore to do the best thing, to do the right thing. And I messed those up. But once I took that approach, man, step one became easy. And let me tell you something. I whooped my own ass with drugs. Drugs and alcohol whooped my ass terribly, but I was the one that went through anything to put another one in me. I was chasing. It was like I was chasing the wind, man. Could never catch it. Now I'm talking about I literally did a whole lot of shit, man, in the name of another one. And in another group, they say one is too many because one gets me started, man, and I can't stop. And 1,000 is never enough. And that's the thing about that. Every time I started different. When I said that at the beginning about that temperance movement and all that, you know, they said this and that. I started being temperate. Hey, man, I'm just going to drink here. I'm just going to smoke there. I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do that. I tried everything I could, man. I'm just going to drink brown liquor. That clear liquor killed me. I'm just going to, come on, man. I tried everything. I'm just going to pray and get back to my roots. And I'm talking about a firm believer in God. I'm talking about a person that thought he was going to be a minister and a preacher one day. I'm talking about good roots. And I still ain't had no connection to God. Firm believer, believed, didn't have no juice, no conscious contact. But when I took that approach, again, I say, when I took that approach, when I looked at how I messed my life up, not everybody else, when I took that responsibility approach, when I said, you know what, I'm going to own this, I fucked up everything, then I was open. I was open for some suggestions. Because, see, anytime I had another idea where I might get me another one, I was closed off from all the other shit. I was closed off from anybody else's idea that would take me off of this path, this destructive path, and put me on the right path again. I was closed off of that because I had to get one more, and I always had to get one more, and I always got to get one more. And that is that is seriously the heartache of alcoholics and addicts, because we don't look at it as a disease until we fuck our whole life up. And the point being told, the alcoholic and the addict is a sick person. Excuse me. A very sick person. And the bad part about it is people don't have no pity on an alcoholic or the addict. People don't feel sympathy for the alcoholic and addict. Why? Because this motherfucker's an asshole. This motherfucker done fucked up shit. This motherfucker ain't did nothing for his kids. This motherfucker done took rent money and spent it on dope. You know how you would feel sick for, sympathy and for a sick person that's in the hospital? You would go visit them and maybe, take them some flowers. Anything. Try to cheer them up. No, not for the alcoholic. Not for the addict. Don't feel sorry for that motherfucker. Shit, because he do grimy shit. He do fucked up shit. He do irresponsible shit. Yeah. So when I went to that place in detox, man, all I had to do was think back. I just had to think back. That was it. I didn't have to do nothing major. All I had to do was think back of how my life kept going. So no matter how I started, sometimes I start with $100, sometimes I start with $1, sometimes I started with $1,200, sometimes one time I started with about $3,800. No matter how I started, every time it ended the same. I spent my last. Now I'm going to ask the motherfucker for some credit. And that only happens a time or two, if that. And then guess what? Now I'm on some licks. Because guess what? No matter how many I put in me, I still need another one. And I keep telling myself that lie. And that's another thing, man. I was very powerless over how I lied to myself. I lied to myself like a motherfucker. And it made me easily lie to other people because guess what? I believed the shit I was telling them because I had already lied to my damn self and convinced me. Yeah. That's split personality shit. Yeah. Yeah. So I did stuff like that all the time. You know? And when I laid in that detox, man, and I accepted that I had fucked my life up. I did. I had already became honest with myself when I called that dude. He said, go to detox or get in their program. I was already honest. I had already knew I was at the end of my rope. And you know what? I couldn't manage me no more. I was already completely the fuck unmanageable. My life was. No matter who I could manage and run, I couldn't manage and run me. Not to mention, I didn't control shit. I couldn't even control how I talked. I couldn't control what I thought about. There was a whole lot of powers greater than me at work that I didn't even realize was going on. So I laid in that bed finally after 2 days of sitting in the chair, and this was October 25th. And then, a couple of days later, so October 27th of 2009, when I laid in that bed finally, and I had to think about my life, and I had just had to have some acceptance, man. Yeah. I'm powerless over alcohol, over drugs, over what I think, over what other people think. Powerless over narcotics. Powerless over, just name it. Powerless over shit that just go on in the world that I think I can control. Powerless over gaining shit and losing shit and gaining shit and losing shit. Powerless over my conception of God, man. I couldn't even form a calculative understanding of my conception of God at that time because I was trying to blame God. I was trying to say, God, if you're there, why would you let me go through this? See? So then, just then, I start believing because I knew that the guy that had walked me through these steps before, man, he had already had the experiences of relapse. He had already had, getting back into recovery and having a great life. He was happy with himself. And I started believing that a power greater than me would restore me to sanity, which took me to step 2. And let me break that piece off for you. Sanity. So when I was laying in that bed, I had to realize how insane I was. Not just for all the shit that I fucked up that was going well for me, not just for consistently believing the lie that I tell myself that I can just drink one. No, not just for that. This is the insane part. For real, this is the humiliating, insane part. I couldn't even take a shower on a daily basis, and there was a shower accessible for me. I couldn't even eat a normal meal on a daily basis. One normal meal on a daily basis, okay? The most I'm going to get is some Lay's chips, and I'm still going to get my beer, you know, and all that shit. I couldn't manage to do anything for myself to live. That's the crazy part about it, just to live. You know, this is shit that people do just to live, you know, and I know better than that. I know I'm supposed to wash my ass on a daily basis. I couldn't manage to brush my teeth. I don't even know the last time I brushed my teeth by the time I got to detox, October 25th of 2000. I don't even know. I don't remember when the last time I brushed my teeth before that. That's insane. See? Then that power greater than me, you know, I wanted to say, okay, you know, I had this conception of God that wasn't a contact with God. So I could never feel no juice. I couldn't feel that contact. So guess what? That conception of God that I had was not working for me. It just was not working for me, period. And I heard somebody say one time, you know, you took your God in the crack house. I don't want that God. Excuse me. Excuse me. Yeah. So my conception of God was all warped and tore up. See? And then, you know, the true acceptance on step one, don't get me wrong, we going to step two now, but the true acceptance on step one is when I read, it said the alcoholic is like a riot. The self-will of alcoholic is like, you know, self-will one riot. So he's like a riot. And what does that mean? Like when I heard that, I said, what the fuck? And I thought about it. You know, I had to look it up. And, you know, a riot is when you go off and start tearing your own shit up. You know, people get together in the city that they live in and they start tearing the city up that they live in. Yeah. A riot ain't when you go tear somebody else's shit up now. See, people get together and go to another city and start tearing their shit up. No, that's a war. And it says the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot. And I read that and I said, damn. Wow, that's powerful. You know why? Because I tore my own shit up in my life. I wasn't beefing with a motherfucker and they came and tore my shit up. I wasn't, you know, beefing with this guy and he fucked up this relationship I had with this person. No, I fucked up the relationships I had with people. I fucked up the shit that I had. I sold everything. I mean, you name it. I did it. So I was an extreme example of self-will run riot. And I didn't hardly think so. And I took that piece and I had to, you know, embrace that piece. And once I embraced that piece, I realized I was so fucking insane that I kept fucking my whole life up. Me, wasn't nobody else. So I start believing. And what I start believing, see, well, I had a moment of clarity and I called that guy and he said, go to detox and then get in the program. That was my lifeline to a power greater than myself that started to restore me to sanity that day. One step towards sanity was me going to detox. The next step towards sanity was following the directions that them people had at that facility for me. And they said, you eat at this time, you shower at this time, You go to this class, you pay attention, you keep notes, you go to the clothes closet, get you some free ass clothes, some clean shit. You give your laundry up to the laundry people at this time. Yeah, they had a set of guidelines that was actually restoring me to sanity while I was just in the facility just following some fucking directions. See, I start doing sane stuff again. And see, that power greater than me, it doesn't say came to believe that a power greater than myself, like God, it doesn't say that. It says came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Meaning that that power greater than me, I didn't have to understand as God. There's a whole lot of powers greater than self that ain't God. The place I was in was a power greater than me. The electric that was going through the place was a power greater than me. The chair I sat on while I was at the meetings was a power greater than me. The fellowship of the people that were there was a power greater than me. My sponsor, the guy that was helping me, was a power greater than me. The 12 steps was a power greater than me. The classes was a power greater than me. Yeah. And I used to sit up in them classes and be real quiet, man, and really listen. And my mind would be going 100 miles a minute, and I would be thinking about all the people I owe and how I'm gonna get back on this, and all that stuff. And I sat long enough and still enough that finally, and I followed the directions long enough. Finally, my mind started being still. Finally, I was able to be open-minded enough to listen. Because at first, man, this is my last relapse I'm talking about. At first, man, and I'm telling y'all about this particular time that I'm being sober now because this is when everything came together. But at first, I was sitting in them classes and my mind was critiquing how the people was teaching the class. This guy only got 10 months sober. Shit, he don't know shit. This guy ain't certified to teach recovery. He don't know shit. This is how I look. So what I was doing was I was creating a separatism there. I was creating a block. And thank God for my sponsor said, you shut the hell up in these classes and you pay attention. If some motherfucker want to know how to get high on crack, then you share. And I sat real still, man, and I started realizing some stuff. I started realizing that there are powers greater than me inside me, man. My heartbeat, power greater than me. The thoughts that hit my mind at any given second, power greater than me. My blood flowing through my body, my digestive system. I mean, come on, man. This is all a power greater than me, man. My breathing. I don't control breathing. Fuck, I go to sleep. The hard as I sleep, I'm probably ain't gonna fucking breathe if I gotta think about breathing. Powers greater than me that live in me, and powers greater than me that's in the world. There's a whole lot of powers greater than self, man. And as I sat there, man, and then I started looking at me and these powers greater than self and what I needed to do, man, to to really change my life, man. I really took hold of step 3, man. I really took hold of step 3. Cause see, when I sat there and I realized that there's a whole lot of powers greater than self, and guess what? None of them powers is actually God Himself. So that means God ain't about to come down in a burning bush and speak to me and say, Nate, Twink, man, you need to do this and that. No. What happened was God, being God all by Himself, works through powers greater than me. And that brought me to that step 3, man. And that step 3 was made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. And you first look at this step, especially being in the church, especially being in the Catholic Church. And it says, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. You automatically think my will is my thinking. What I'm willing to do, what I strive out to do. And my life is the consummation in the complete life history of my actions. That's what my life is. So I got my thinking and my actions. So I'm turning this over to the care of God. When you first look at it, the care of God, oh man, I must gonna be a monk. I must gonna be a Buddhist. I'm gonna definitely be a preacher, a minister, or something out of this. That's not what that means. See, when if it said turn my will, my life over to God, then we talking about trying to be a monk or preacher or something like that. But it says turn my will and my life over to the care of God. And let me break that down for you real quick. Because, see, the care of God could just mean what it is. God caring for our will and our lives through powers greater than ourselves. And let me tell you why. I'm a mechanic. I do mechanic work, body work. If a person brings me their car and they say, okay, I need you to change my radiator and my brakes. I say, okay, they hand me the key. I accept the key. I say, I'll call you when I'm done. In that particular sense right there, a person has turned their car over to the care of a mechanic. Period. They didn't give me the car so I could have the car. No, it's my car now. So I'm not giving my will to God so he can have my will, or it's God's will now, because it's not, because God gave us free will. So if you bigger than God and you say, okay, God, I don't want this will, I'm going to give it back to you, then you can tell God what to do. So God gave us this will. And what we do when we turn it over to the care of God is we follow the directions in that power greater than self. We talk about in recovery. We talk about in whatever facility you might be in. We talk about in the step work. We follow those directions, man. And that's how God cares for our will and our lives. Because if we look at it the other way, like, if we do that, then guess what? We becoming monks and we turn our will over to God. Then it'd be like that person turning over their car to me. Basically, they're going to sign the title. We're going to notarize it. We're going to get the car switched into my name. You know what I mean? It's going to be my motherfucking car. And then all of a sudden, when I fix the car, I'm going to turn around and give her the car back. I'm going to go ahead and notarize the title again and switch it back into her name. No, that's not what that means. So I seen that, and it was in myself. I was afraid of that step because that step was bringing me back to the Catholic, church and religion. It was bringing me back to me wanting to be an altar boy, being an altar boy, me wanting to be a minister, priest, not being a priest because I wanted to go to the street. So I thought maybe, I was giving my will over to God. But what God does is he cares for our will and our lives through powers greater than ourselves. And power greater than myself said that I need to continue to do the steps. And that's the only effective change that was on alcoholism and drug addiction. And see, that brought us to step 4, which is made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And that's powerful right there, because you make a searching, that means look real hard, and fearless, that means with no damn fear, I'm about to inventory everything in my fucking life that I could possibly remember. And moral means right or wrong. So what I do with that step 4, see, following the directions of step 3, making my decision, and guess what? I'm gonna touch on step 3 a little bit more. I can make a decision all day long. For instance, I'm going to decide to go pull $500 out the bank right now. Right? I'm going to just sit here and talk to y'all. I'm just going to decide to pull $500 out the bank. It ain't $500 in the bank to pull out. So even if I just got up and went to the bank and swiped my shit or said, hey, man, I need $500, $500 ain't in the account. So I could decide all day long. But if I don't put the action behind it, like put the money in the account so that when I decide to pull it out, I can pull it out, then the decision is just that. It's just a decision. I could decide to do something and never do it. And that's why step 4, making a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, that is the vigorous job we got to do. It's called a house cleaning. It's called a house cleaning. See, because that's step 4, I'm looking at what is actually going on with me. What is my stock in trade? See, if we treat our life like a business, then we know that businesses take inventory on a regular basis. And taking inventory is how they figure out, okay, what stock do we have in trade that we can trade off to get paid for, and what don't get paid. So whatever doesn't get paid, we need to eliminate that or cut our losses and sell it for something cheap or throw it away. If we look at life like a business, my life is a business, then I need to inventory everything that's going on or that went on in my life. I need to inventory that. And see, what happens is, for the alcoholics such as myself, for the addicts such as myself, I first realized that I have a lot of built up anger for people, places, and things. I got a lot of built up anger. And what happens is, when I start to inventory this stuff, I start to realize that I've been holding resentments. Yeah. Which means like I've been holding anger against stuff that happened or against people for many, many years. And the resentment strictly mean that I refeel that same anger, that same mental, emotional, you can call it a blocker, but I still feel that same fucked up way every time I think about whatever happened or whatever experience that was. So I hold that resentment. And I got a great example for resentments. Think of resentments as dirty laundry. And every time you get a resentment, you just throw it in this dirty laundry bag. And this dirty laundry bag is like one of them netted bags that you got at the joint or whatever. It's a netted laundry bag where they just basically throw the whole fucking load in there in the bag. That's why it's netted like that. But I got this laundry bag of dirty laundry and I carry this around with me. So first of all, resentments start to weigh you down in life. Anger, built up frustration starts to weigh you down in life. So as I throw resentments or dirty laundry in this bag, the bag's getting heavier. Not to mention, every time you come around or I come around somewhere, it's some funky ass laundry smelling shit. Let's keep that in mind. So the bag starts to stink profusely. And what happens with the resentments, see, on the inside, you think about the resentments as being dirty laundry, and they start to make my attitude stinks. See? They start to make my thinking stink. I have stinking thinking. Not one time do I say, okay, well, let me wash this laundry. That's the same thing to do. Let me put this bag of laundry in the washing machine and wash my shit and fold it up. So I ain't got to walk around with this big, giant ass, heavy ass bag weighing me down. I can't even do shit. I can't even work because I got this bag strapped to my fucking back. You understand? And people ain't got to look at me all crazy because I'm so fucking nasty and smelly and all this shit. See, and me washing the clothes in the bag or whatever, it cleans that up. And I can start with a fresh slate of clean clothes. That's what the step 4 does for us. we examine everything we put on paper. Excuse me. And just to be quite honest with you, once I start putting them resentments down and setting them on paper, see, excuse me, once I start setting them on paper, for some of us, as myself, it was the first time I had ever wrote down something that I was mad at, wrote down something that I was angry of, wrote down someone that had harmed me, wrote down some shit that I had done. And I didn't realize that until, excuse me, until I put all that on paper. Until I put all that on paper, it was always very personal. Everything that I had wrote was always in me. Always fucked up. I always felt this certain way. Excuse me. But until I put it on paper, it never left me. It never had a lighter feeling than what it felt. When I put it on paper, it became objective. It became an object that I can view and study and run past somebody else. So once I did that, I started putting my resentments down. And I had resentments against everything. I had resentments against Catholicism. I had resentments against God. I had resentments against all kind of people. I had resentments against the school. I had resentments against my high school. I had resentments against everything. And once I did that, I started putting me in there. And something started to happen. Because I didn't know I was mad at myself for disappointing my mama. I was mad at myself for having a very educational and very emotional upbringing and not making something good out of it. I was mad at myself. I was mad. There was so much I started writing. The whole rest of the resentment stuff came from me resenting the fuck out of me. I was so mad at myself for not being in my son's life. Period. I mean, since he was like 3, I was mad at myself. And I was so hurt, and it was so much pain, and I poured out so many tears, pouring out this stuff on paper, man. Excuse me. I was really mad at myself. And I start looking at this stuff on paper. Then it, it asks that you do people we had harmed, and I start putting all that down. And no matter how long the list was, the way that I harmed myself was longer than that. Yeah. So once I got down to the nitty gritty on the people I harmed, I had to put me in there because I had harmed me in many, many, many ways. Yeah. Then it got off into fears. Yeah. And it says in recovery, it says we are driven by 100 forms of fear. And that's exactly the truth, man. And fear in many manifested ways drove me in my life. That's what drove me. Not to mention, fear of being a little guy. Fear of not being good at, sports drove me to be outrageously overbearing when it came to the exercises and the practicing and stuff. Fear and me failing miserably at selling drugs drove me to sell drugs so tough that, I had to go down for some time. I had to front people big shit, and, I had to give away a bunch of shit. I mean, fear that people would look at me as this little punk ass motherfucker, had me carrying them pistols and all kind of crazy shit. Had me having to run around in front in my cars and all that shit. So I put down my fears. And when I thought I wasn't afraid of anyone or anything really, especially after battling my dad, and I thought I wasn't afraid of anything, I was scared of damn near everything. And I gotta be honest, I was really scared of almost everything. I was even afraid of success. I feared responsibility that success brought. So fear ravaged and pillaged my whole fucking life, man. And I didn't even realize that. I kept looking at it as something else, you know. And then it got down to my sex harm. And everybody's sex life is different. I understand that. And mine, you know, I mean, it's very similar, but it's different. You know, every body I even talk to about sex thinks and feels a different way about sex than anybody else. You understand what I'm saying? So the sex inventory is entirely that person, and the whole inventory is that person. But the point is, I don't have to feel like I have to meet anybody's criteria in any of this shit. Excuse me. So I had a whole lot of stuff to put down on the whole inventory. And that when I did that so thorough, I did that inventory so thorough. And I'm talking about omitting nothing. I didn't leave nothing out. And he kept putting me off. The guy that was sponsoring me, he put me off a week. And he said, "No, I can't do it this week. Let's do it next week." And I kept, I would be in a meeting and stuff would come up. And it was almost like once I opened these old wounds, man. I opened them up. It was a lot of stuff that came out of there that I forgot about. And I kept writing and kept putting it down on paper. And another week came by and he said, "Man, I can't do it this week." He said, "We're going to do it another." I waited 3 more weeks, you know what I'm saying, for him to do that other step with me, which is what we about to talk about. But by the time we came to do the 5th step, I was ready. And I had wrote down stuff all the way up to the moment I sat on this guy's couch and started telling him my story. And the 5th step is simply this: admitting to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. And that step right there, some of us had never done. Others of us, like myself, has done a portion of that, which is basically admitting my wrongs. Because I used to go to confession, in church and admit my wrongs. And what happened for me was, once I got to admitting my wrongdoings and stuff, and this guy would tell me a brief little story on, how he did something similar, and it made me more relieved because I knew I was talking to somebody that I could trust. I knew I was talking to somebody that had knew how I felt, where I had come from, and I was talking to somebody that was where I wanted to be, man. I'm talking about happy, joyous, and free. I was talking to somebody that wasn't pillaged by his past. I was talking to somebody that was proud to just be a man. I was talking to somebody who didn't have a drinking and drug problem anymore. The problem had been solved. So I got real down and dirty, man. And they say get in. You got to give up the more grosser handicaps. It says that. And I told him everything, man. And I told him everything from everywhere. I didn't even give a fuck. And it was 10 more cases, on my name when in that confession right there. And let me tell you something. As I talked to him, see, this is why the 5th step is not just a confession. It's much more. As I talked to him, he started guiding me and connecting the dots to exactly why I kept doing what the fuck I kept doing. And see, we need somebody that's outside of our personal experience We need somebody that understands what we're trying to accomplish with this step. We need somebody who has taken this step before. We need somebody who can help us find the exact nature. The exact nature of all our wrong. And I kept seeing how selfish and self-centered I was in situations. I kept seeing how frightened I was. I kept seeing how egomatic driven I was. I kept seeing how because of fear, he liked to tell me I got a low man complex, and I believe it. Out of fear, I had to show a motherfucker some shit and do some crazy shit. Excuse me. And sitting down with him, man, you can, in this step it says to God, to ourselves, and to another human being. You could say this, had this conversation, this 4-step inventory, talking in the mirror to your damn self, praying, talking to God. But there is a sense of humility. And I mean a sense of being humble when you have to share this with another human being. And in fact, when you're sharing this with another human being, you're also sharing it aloud to yourself and to God. And that's how that's broke down. And let me tell you something, man. It goes against all my survival techniques. My survival skills said I ain't gonna tell on nobody, especially myself. And what happened was I had to tell everything on myself and nothing on anybody else. This was focused towards me. And I sat down and had that conversation, and it was pretty long. And once I had that conversation, man, something started to happen. I started to feel this big relief. I started to breathe a little better. Sinus is killing my ass now, but I started to breathe better. I started to be able to feel better about myself. For I had known then that there was a strong chance that my life would change for the best. Then I had to go. He took me back to the facility, and they let me sit in this room for a whole hour, a little over an hour. But it also says, go to a quiet place for an hour and go over everything you just said. Was it and question yourself, was I thorough enough? Did I expand enough on this point? Have I left anything out? That's the most important thing. If I left anything else, I need to call him immediately and finish that. And I went in there and I sat there and I cried and I cried more about believe it or not, I cried more about the image my dad had on me that I hated, that I said I'll never be like that with my kids, man. And I cried more about that absence from my one son's life. I cried so much about that. That is the God's honest truth, that it killed me, because I knew I had missed a person's whole life, and I should have been there, and I couldn't escape my demons. And I had stressed this to this guy, and he said, God gonna work everything out. And I believed him. And in doing that, I became ready to have God remove my defects of character. And this is a step we become ready to do this. Just like in the second step, we came to believe, because some people ain't there. Even though I did my 5th step, I wasn't entirely ready to have God remove all my defects of character. But I became ready. And God didn't just remove all my defects of character. He's definitely and consistently putting things in my life, or allowing things to be in my life, that I got to work on myself. And working on myself against those defects is how I start to remove them. And then And I said a prayer and I humbly asked him to remove my shortcomings. Because defects of character and shortcomings is like two sides to a coin. It's the same damn coin. Same damn coin. Yeah. So when you real impatient, you have no tolerance. Impatient being the character defect, tolerance, no tolerance being the shortcoming. And when I have no tolerance of shit, I got no patience. I don't tolerate shit. That's my character defects. And I'm extreme in the character defects. Then I have no patience at all for shit. And that's the simple part of it. There's a lot of many other things I could say, but that's the simple part of it. And I did. I prayed to God and I said, my creator, and said the prayer, and please remove all these defects and these shortcomings. And God got to working on me right then, boy. He got to working on me right then. Because see, right after that, I had to do my step 8. So in doing that prayer and all that, the 6 and 7, as them working together, 6 being entirely ready to have God remove all my defects of character, and 7 saying I humbly asked him to remove my shortcomings. Though I sat there in that hour and I got ready and asked him to remove my shortcomings, that step 6 and 7, working on removing my defects of character and humbly asking him to remove my shortcomings, is a lifelong process. Yeah. I'm constantly working on that. So what I did with 6 and 7, I just accepted it into my reality. I accepted it into my heart and my mind. I believed it. And from that point on, I've been working on my defects of character and working on my shortcomings. And I'm talking about ask God to remove them. And some shortcomings and defects of character, I don't be wanting to let go. They make me feel good. So once I did that, I went to step 8, man. And what I did was I made a list of all people I had harmed and became willing to make amends to them. And there was a lot to that, because some of the people I had harmed, it was because they had harmed me. But I found out that invariably back in the day, sometime or whatever, I stepped on their toes. And that's how they retaliated. And it seemed like it didn't have any cause or provocation at the time when they retaliated. And these motherfuckers must have been holding resentment forever. And I had to look at these people as they are sick people. In whatever way. They ain't necessarily got to be alcoholic or addict, but whatever way, they're sick people. And see, when I started making that list, I got that list from my step 4 for the people I had harmed. I started making that list, man, and making that list, see. And I was willing to make amends. A whole lot of that list had to do with money. I was willing to make the amends, but I didn't have the money to make the amends. Then it brought me to step 9. And I call step 9 a God step. Step 9 says, make direct amends wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. So to make direct amends wherever possible, that doesn't mean I'm finding people to make direct amends to. And if I have the, ability to do that, that's cool. But that's not what that means. Making direct amends means I'm already willing in step 8 to make direct amends. In step 9, I start making amends. I remember in my last session or the session before that, amends is a rebuilding of something or add on. It's not, I'm sorry, because sorry didn't do the shit. So amends is like a, like a real deal thing. And if it's money, it's repaying the money. If it's a relationship I fucked up, sometimes it's just sit there and let a motherfucking cuss you smooth the fuck out for some shit you done. And guess what? There's a chance that they may forgive you. And it's a chance they won't. But when it says whatever possible will start to happen to me in my life, and this is how, and it's something real little, and it clicked in my head when it happened. I was literally working in the pyramid's office, and I'm talking about it. I had completed my steps, and I was working in the pyramid's office, and which is a staff position where you go teach the class to the recovering alcoholics in the program behind you. And I was at a gas station, and mind you, we had a stipend of $60 a week. This was back in 2010. And I was at a gas station, and I had just spent $15 out of my $60 stipend for that week. So I had like $45. And there was a guy at a pump that I knew and recognized. This guy I used to buy my shit from and do all this and that. And that guy, the last thing he gave me was something for $40. And I had played it, I had dipped on it. And I seen that guy, and I said, hey man, you remember me? And he was like, oh yeah, I remember you. What's up, bro? I said, look, man, I owed you for something, and I owed you $40, man. Here's $45, man. That's all I got. I'm in recovery. I'm doing my thing. I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm trying to make up for the shit I did. And he was like, wow, dude, okay. Well, that's cool, man. Hey, man, stay like that. Because mind you, when I went to the healing place, oh, Lord. Man, I was so shrunk up. My face was all sunk in. My neck was long as hell. I looked at like an alien, bro. Big ass head, face like that. I was terrible, man. And when this guy seen me, it was like 11 months later. And let me tell you something. I looked at like a totally different human being. He almost didn't recognize me. And he said, just keep doing what you're doing. And right there, I realized that was a God step. So it's in God's time. So when it happens, that's the wherever possible. And when it says, except when to do so will injure them or others, when I make amends and in my amends, I'm injuring a motherfucker. Or when I go to make an amends, say I owe a motherfucker $1,000 and he ain't trying to hear, no, I'm sorry and I apologize and I ain't got the $1,000. And I know if I go make that amends, guess what? He gonna kill me. If I go there and say, hey man, you know, I'm in recovery, I'm gonna pay you $20 a week, that motherfucker might shoot me. So it says, except when to do so would injure them, the people I'm making amends to, or others, I'm part of the others. Or I'm gonna make amends to this guy over here, and I'm gonna tell him, you know, that one of his best partners helped me do some shit against his ass. No, that's another other. So as we get off into these higher steps, I'm gonna bring you to another step, man. That's so cold blooded. It has all of the first steps in combined in one. Because that amends process and that being willing to make an amends is a lifelong process. So is the character defects and the willing to have God remove all my shortcomings is a lifelong process. Then that brings us to step 10, which is continue to take personal inventory and when I'm wrong, promptly admit it. Step 10 kind of embraces 1 and 9. See, because when I take inventory, I'm going to see where I'm powerless at. I'm going to see where I'm unmanageable at. That's step 1. I'm honest. That's the how and why of it. Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. So step 2, I come to believe that a power greater than myself gonna restore me to some sanity. That's some open-minded shit. And guess what? The power greater than myself is the step work that I'm doing at that time. So I got step 1, I'm powerless and unmanageable over some shit, right? While I'm taking my inventory in step 10, then the power greater than me that's going to restore me to some sanity. See, I ain't got no sanity if I hold some resentments. I could be drunk off anger. I ain't got no damn sanity if, I got some false pride going on. I could be drunk off pride, man. Yeah. So that's the open-minded part. Number 3, making a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. That takes some willingness. That's the willing part. See? Number 4 is the inventory. So 10 says continue to take personal inventory. Number 4 is that inventory process. I know that inventory process because I did it in step 4, and that's what the inventory is. Step 5, when I go tell somebody that inventory, guess what? That's where the step 10 at that says and promptly admitted it. Step 6 and 7 is definitely in there because guess what? When I continue to take personal inventory and I promptly admitted it, I'm facing a character defect. I'm facing a shortcoming. One of my character defects is I don't like a motherfucker to look at me like I'm less than what I am. So I may lie to him or I may tell him some other shit that make him not see me different like that. So I'll be dishonest. So that open-mindedness is step 5. Bring me to that step 6, that willingness. Yeah. Yeah, that willingness to be ready. Yeah. Yeah. And then that step 7, the honesty again. That God remove my shortcomings. Step 8, hey, I may not want to make amends. I may not want to make amends to a motherfucker. I got to be open-minded about that. Some people I make amends to, they might be sick. They might be sick behind my shit. Number 9, I'm making amends. So in step 10, when it says, continue to take personal inventory and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it, that embraces a whole lot of shit. It embraces the first 9 steps of our program. Because now you need to be willing to make the amends. Now, when you get in 10 and you continuing to do the same shit you did from step 1 to 9, see, this is when stuff start to happen, see. I'm already, getting a different attitude and outlook upon life just at step 9. Stuff start to happen in my life. See? I start to face the world and look the world in the eye, man. I ain't all scared, run away no more. In fact, if I see somebody I need to make amends to, that's what I need to do. I need to be willing to do that. So step 10, I need to be honest again. I need to be honest. Then we get up into step 11, man. It's sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God as I understood him, praying only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry it out. And that to me, man, is I'm getting into my inner self, man. God that's in me, I'm getting into him. I'm taking inventory. I'm doing the stuff that I need to do, man, to stay with this attitude of recovery. I'm meditating. I'm building a conscious and improving an unconscious contact with God as I understand God. And all I'm doing whenever I pray, I'm not doing the bargain prayers anymore. And I suggest anybody try this. This works. It works miracles in my life right now, today. I pray only for his will for me and that he grant me the power to carry it out. See, my will, being a man, my will could be strong, could be super fucking strong. But my will don't compare to God's will. God's will is God. So my will for me is definitely not as great as God's will is for me. And all it takes for me is to be real honest right there and accept that fact. And when I get real honest and I understand there's a power greater than me than there's God, or even looking at God as a power greater than me because he is, then I know that his will for me is better than my will ever was for me or ever will be for me. Then I need to have the faith and the courage to trust that. I got to be real open-minded to have that type of faith and that kind of courage to just pray for knowledge of his will for me and the power to carry it out. We ain't talking about, hey, God, please let me get this job. God, please let me make it out of this stuff here. I've been sober for 10 years. God, I just want to do the right thing, but I didn't mean to punch dude in his face. God, no, I need to, God, your will be done. Thank you so much for my sobriety. Please give me the strength to do your will. Amen. And my life start to change. Real tough. It start to change, man. That's the open-mindedness. Then step 12, I got to be willing. I didn't even want to, this thing I started about 3:00 in the morning, man, and I had a long day. I did not want to do this session today, but I did, give my word that I'm going to at least attempt my best to do every Sunday, which actually veers off into Monday now, but you can watch this whenever. But I used to be like this with meetings. I would be like, man, I don't even feel like going to a meeting, man. I don't even. And then I would go because I didn't feel like going. And guess what? They put a whole lot of insurance on my sobriety. It made me feel 10 times better about life. And hopefully I was able to help somebody. So the willingness is in step 12 when it says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, talking about the first 11 steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. It says we tried. And a spiritual awakening is simply this. It's like a spiritual experience over a period of time. It means that I have a profound change of mind and heart over a period of time doing the step work in recovery. I have a profound, earth-shattering mind and mind and emotional empowerment. It's a change of heart, attitude, everything. And I know I've had that. Sometimes I have it now. It's amazing. And it says we tried to carry this message to alcoholics. The reason it says tried and to practice these principles in our affairs, all our affairs. The reason it says try is because we're human. We're not going to get shit perfect. But the main reason why is because guess what? I could try my best. I could carry this message. I can go speak at meetings. I could do this online shit. I could boom, boom, boom. And somebody that's listening ain't even going to catch the message. Somebody that's in one of them rooms where I do my class or my meeting, they going to be sitting right there the whole time. They might even be looking dead at me. And they mind going to be some fucking where else. And you know what? That ain't on me. That's between them and God. But I try to carry the message. And that's the willingness. Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. Step 1, honesty. Step 2, open-mindedness. Step 3, willingness. Step 4, honesty. Step 5, open-mindedness. Step 6, willingness. Step 7, honesty. Step 8, open-mindedness. Step 9, willingness. Step 10, honesty. Step 11, open-mindedness. Step 12, willingness. Keep that. I'm Nate. I'm alcoholic.